Ah, mythology. Epic acts of heroism and whispers of monsters in the dark. These stories have been passed down through generations and cultures as both cautionary tales and inspiring acts of courageous individuals. From the bone-chilling origins of the Wendigo to mighty battles between ancient gods, mythology and folklore cover such a wide variety of stories passed down through time. And today, much like the ancient heroes of old, I'm setting off on an epic quest to uncover this wealth of stories, find relatable life advice, and answer questions that nobody asked. Everyone knows some kind of mythological story, whether it comes from their own culture or someone else's. But there's a lot of deep unanswered questions out there that I think it's about time we addressed. And who knows, maybe we'll learn something along the way. Today, I thought we'd start with something simple. How to escape from hell. Or rather, how to escape from the underworld, ancient Greek style. Many heroes in Greek mythology ventured into the underworld in search of lost souls or loved ones, but not all of them had the goal to escape. We won't be counting heroes like Odysseus and Aeneas, who basically took day trips down to the underworld to talk to some lost souls before hightailing it out of there. No, we're specifically looking at those who either tried to rescue a loved one or escape the clutches of Hades themselves, so that we can judge overall how successful these escape attempts were. Our first escape attempt is one that's pretty commonly known. Most people know the story of how Orpheus ventured into the underworld to rescue his wife Eurydice after she tragically fell into a nest of vipers on their wedding day, and the vipers weren't too pleased about that. Now, Orpheus was a musician, and when he found his wife's body, he played this epic song of mourning that so moved the gods and the nymphs that they advised him to seek out the underworld. There he was able to equally move Hades and Persephone, who presided over that realm, into giving him a second chance at his happily ever after with Eurydice. The catch, of course, being that while Orpheus was leading his wife out of the underworld, he couldn't turn to look back on her, lest her soul disappear forever. And he did a great job. Right up until the very last second. See, when Orpheus reached the surface, he was so overcome with anxiety that he turned to look and see if Eurydice was still following him, forgetting that both of them had to be out of the underworld for the conditions to be met. She was still just behind the border, and her soul did indeed disappear forever. A true Greek tragedy if ever there was one. But a really, really bad escape attempt. I mean, come on, Orpheus. You had one job. You were this close. Couldn't you have kept it together for like one more step? Dude. You know, I used to tell a joke about Orpheus and Eurydice, but looking back, wasn't a good idea. Next up is the Abduction of Persephone. Another pretty well-known myth with a lot of adaptations, and also just a little bit more successful in the rescue attempt than Orpheus, though not completely. There's all sorts of retellings of this classic tale, but most follow the same basic structure. Hades falls in love with Persephone from afar, and then just straight up abducts her, which is a pretty literal interpretation of picking up girls, and, you know, not great. Then Persephone's mother Demeter starts looking all over for where her missing daughter could be, but being the goddess of agriculture, neglects the earth in her grief, and the crops just don't grow. Helios, who is basically the god and personification of the sun, who sees everything, tells Demeter what's up and who has her daughter, but there's not much she can do without the help of Mr. King of the Gods himself, Zeus. Zeus, who was kind of hanging out and waiting till the last minute when the people's cries of hunger over there being no crops and the other gods bothering him about it, finally decides that it's time to force Hades to give Persephone back so that everything can be chill again. But Hades is a smart guy, and he gives Persephone some pomegranate seeds, knowing that having eaten the food of the underworld, she'll be bound to spend part of her year there with him. Originally, this was just the winter months, but later writers like Ovid adapted it to become half a year, which means that technically, Persephone's escape attempt became less successful as more adaptations of it were written, which really sucks for her. But at least her escape was more successful than our boy Orpheus's. And now for a true king of cheating death. Sisyphus, who managed to escape from the underworld not once, but twice. Sisyphus was the founder and king of Epira, and kind of a dick. The man was greedy and deceitful and had a habit of murdering his house guests, which was a major no-no back in ancient Greece as it violated xenia, the sacred law of hospitality. But what pissed the gods off most about this guy was just how dang good he was at outwitting them. So Sisyphus kind of betrays one of Zeus's secrets, and is ordered to be chained up underneath Tartarus by Thanatos, aka Death, for his crime against the gods. Sisyphus casually and cleverly strikes up a conversation, first wondering why the ferryman hasn't shown up to, well, ferry his soul on, and then curiously asks Thanatos how the chains he's been doomed to spend all eternity in work. And Thanatos just agrees? While the god of death is showing him how everything fits together all nicely, Sisyphus, being the absolute wild card that he is, chains Thanatos up and escapes back to the surface. While death is trapped, no one can die. And that's like, not great. Eventually, Ares gets annoyed that fighting's no fun anymore because your opponents can't die, so he rescues Thanatos, who then catches up with Sisyphus and takes him in for a second time. But Sisyphus has another trick up his sleeve. Secretly, he orders his wife to throw his naked body into the town square instead of giving him a proper burial, supposedly as a test of her love. So then, when he washes up on the shores of the river Styx naked, he goes to find Persephone, and complains to her that his wife has completely disrespected his remains, and can he please go back to the surface to scold her and get his proper burial rites? Persephone agrees, and now Sisyphus has bamboozled his way out of the underworld twice, and of course he refuses to go back down when the gods ask him. Eventually, Hermes has to forcibly drag Sisyphus back down, where he's sentenced to rolling a boulder up a hill for the rest of eternity. But every time he's about to reach the top, the boulder will roll back down and he has to start all over again. No tricks, no clever schemes, just rolling a rock for the rest of his afterlife. But at least his escape attempts were more successful than anyone else's. The main difference is that Orpheus and those involved in trying to rescue Persephone were playing by the rules of the gods, or more specifically, Hades' rules. In some versions of Sisyphus' story, he encounters Hades in place of Thanatos, but the outcome is still the same. He still outwits him. Sisyphus was never playing by the rules of the gods or anyone else, because he simply thought that he was too clever. He was playing by his own rules. And whilst it did earn him an ironically suitable eternal punishment, he still broke out of the underworld 2 more times than anyone else. And in the context of this video, that makes him a winner. But if we look at these stories as a whole, we can learn 3 simple rules for how to escape from the underworld the ancient Greek way. Don't look back, don't eat the food, play by your own rules, and you'll be out of there in no time. And everything will be fine until one of the other gods eventually catches up with you, drags you back down, chains you to a rock or something for all eternity, punishes you for your hubris and your own personal hell. But hey, you were still more successful than Orpheus.